Hey fam, it's your girl Nachi, and I'm here with.
Damaris, your lovable Matrix rebel.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So we welcome you all back to another episode. And before we get started, I do have a question for everybody. Are your attachments helping you grow or holding you back? And that's really what we want to know when we're talking about attachments and the role in our lives, spirituality, and our own personal growth. We don't recognize it as often. I know that this is attachment creeps up when we least expect it. And when you think about relationships or attachments to material things, we tend to hold on even tighter and can't let go. So we want to talk about how that plays into our lives and we're just going to kick it off with that.
Yeah, and I think it'll be good to start with what are we defining as attachments for this conversation, right? Because I think some people may just feel like attachments to things or to ideas or to visions, but we're also talking about relationships, the bonds that you've created with your loved ones, and
Right.
that's all a part of it. Spirituality, psychologically. So those are all things that we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, there's many different types of attachments. So if we talk about emotional attachments, right? Where this is about connections you have with people or relationships, as you mentioned, that you get a sense of love or support and belonging. So you think about close friendships. I have friends that I've known since shoot, I was 13 years old,
Right.
right? I have, I can't even I've had romantic partners that I have stayed in that relationship well after the expiration date. And that's part of attachment. You could be attached to an idea of what that relationship holds or what it used to hold, right? And family ties. I feel like we're attached to our own family, our immediate
No,
family.
yeah, no, we're obsessed with each other,
Yes.
with our parents. Yes, it's what is a professional therapist told you that it was a problem, but we don't deem it as a problem. But this
No.
is what you get for going to a white male therapist.
Yes, yes. And just so that you all know, I was very young. I was very young.
But wait, could we step back? Real talk, you think you have an MD and that you can diagnose all kinds of things within yourself like a
It's
doctor
called
would.
no, it's called
So,
I read, I
wow,
receive
wow.
knowledge.
Okay.
And
You sound
yes,
very defensive.
no, no. I'm just saying when
Sounds a
people
little bit
read,
aggressive.
they become knowledgeable.
Okay, keep going.
And
But we bring this up because you went into that doctor's office for this therapy session because you felt you were ADHD.
right. Yes.
Somehow you
I
came to that conclusion on your own,
yes.
self-diagnosed, and
And
then
I don't need a doctor to tell me, but I did go to
but
him
then that
to
doctor was like,
clarify.
actually that's not your problem. The doctor was like,
He
you got
didn't
attachment issues, which was
first of all.
crazy because it
And okay, well, let me just step back. He was number one being dismissive. He was a white man, and he just was not connecting with me on many level. One, he couldn't connect with me as a woman, and two, he
right.
couldn't connect with me as a Black Latina. He came to the conclusion that I had an attachment disorder because I still lived at home
And you
in
were
my
what,
early
23 or something?
yes, I was in my early 20s.
I'm like, do y'all not know how Latinos do?
Right,
The
right.
culture is we are staying home. We're
Yes.
not paying rent
Unless it's like
unnecessarily.
right, unless it's some dire situation, most don't move out of the home at 18.
Look, we grew up with our father telling us, Papi telling us from jump. He's like, these Americans, once you turn 18, they kick you out the house, mommy. They kick you out the house. And I was like, what? That don't even make sense. As I got older, I was like, oh, I see what he's talking about. And
Right,
that
right.
therapist was like, why are you still in your parents' house
Yes.
7 years after your expiration date?
Yeah.
Nah, bruh, maybe in your life.
Right.
That's you,
Not in mine.
right?
I'm good.
My
I'm
parents
not
love
ready.
me.
Right.
No,
I'm
no,
not
my
ready.
parents love me. Fuck
I'm
it.
not ready to
Yeah, and
let
that
that
too.
go.
And that too.
But that happens, right?
Right, right, right. Back to
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I do have an attachment issue, not a disorder, because you ain't gonna plague me with that.
She's like, I rebuke that disease slash disorder you're trying to put on me. But the thing, hmm
Because as I mentioned, I've noticed that I've stayed in relationships well past its expiration
right.
date, right? A lot of it has had to do with, yeah, this is what I know. I'm gonna stay with this.
You like being in a comfort zone.
Yes, yes. And I can go as, as far back as my marriage. I stayed in that marriage longer than I really needed to.
Even before that, you were just always a serial monogamous. Like,
I
you
Yes.
always were in a relationship, and if you were in their relationship, they were never necessarily short. You were
No,
with
they were
them.
very long. That's what I said,
Yeah, yeah.
that I
That's why
stay in
was
these
always you.
relationships longer than I really needed to. And that in and of itself is problematic, but I didn't see it problematic back
Sure,
then. Now,
because
as
you
I'm
live and you
older,
learn, and you crash and you burn. But when I was reading about attachment and the theory of attachment in from the psychology perspective, right? They talk about that attachments develop at birth, and which kind of makes sense because as infants, children use their caregivers as a secure base and a place of comfort where they go back to, like after you go out and experiment, then you come back to your secure place, and that is your
Yeah.
primary caregiver, the one that does provide you that level of security. So for us, when I read that, I was like, yes, absolutely, because that is how we grew up, with a mom who was a very traditional wife, but as well as holding down a job and then taking care of the house, feeding us, taking care of my father from a domestic standpoint. And my father was very much like, I'm bringing home the bacon. I'm taking on
Right.
2 jobs. I'm providing security, not just financially, but also emotionally. He was very loving, very affectionate with us, always bigging us up, always instilling confidence in us. And I know that a lot of people, not a lot, but there's just many women, girls that didn't grow up with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that bond that we developed with our parents was that base and that foundation for security, and how it informed our future relationships, because they also said how that bond that's developed at a young age with your primary caregiver is what eventually informs and influences future relationships. And I've always looked at that. I always knew that without even reading this, simply because growing up, your circle of friends, you see how people act and interact with others in their relationships. And I remember just feeling like, okay, my friends who didn't have a close relationship with their father, whether or not if their parents were together or not, if their father wasn't a part of their lives, because your parents don't need to be married to still have a good
Right.
relationship with your father.
Right.
I recognize that they approach their relationships with men very differently than I did, or some of my friends that did have a closer connection or a different or stronger bond with their father. And it makes sense, right? Because we always grew up feeling secure. So even when you and I, as teenagers, and the boys try to talk to us, we weren't easily gassed. And that's
Right.
simply because
Yeah.
I didn't look for that validation from the boys, because I'm like, first of all, what are you coming with? Oh, I'm cute. That's nice. I hear this from my father. I actually hear better from my father every single day. So what else do you have to tell me? What else do you bring to the table, bruh?
Okay.
And it's just like, oh, okay, but if he's cute, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna give you my number. Okay. But again, I wasn't easily gassed, because
Yeah.
I knew they were gonna talk to some other, like 10 other girls, because this is New York City, and anybody with fallopian tubes
Right.
is getting
There
some
was
action.
plenty. Yes, there was
Like,
plenty out
that's
there.
it.
Plenty.
So I
Yeah.
say that because I truly do believe that your attachments, especially when it comes to relationships, they form at an early stage. And of course, with the very first relationships in your life, and that's usually with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that does inform a lot of how you move forward in life with all types of different relationships.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And it's just not only emotional because that, that plays into having that sense of security as you mentioned, but then there's self-identity types of attachments. And if you think about the role that you play maybe as an older sibling or someone if you're an only child
yeah,
and
because you stay reminding me and Alfonsito about
yeah,
how hard it was for you
yeah.
being the older of us and our little subset of cousins. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because y'all
How there
know.
was so much
But that's
pressure
not
put
what
on
I was
you.
but that's not where I was
Oh,
going.
okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Carry on.
Thank you.
Carry on. You're so defensive.
I'm not.
Triggered.
But I'm thinking of the older sibling who take on the responsibility or feels like they have that responsibility to take care of their other siblings or
Hmm.
maybe if they're part of a single parent home that
They have to
they
take on certain
feel yes
responsibilities, right?
and
And they're probably
and
given
that
to them
carries right
too, because
that
the parent
yes
is like, I need your help.
right and
Yeah.
so they start having this or they continue feeling it goes into their adulthood where they just continue feeling like they have to be so if you think about and this is not always the case but if you think about like those toxic relationships where the older sibling or the sibling that's always caring for others like just putting other people in before
The
them.
people pleaser.
Yes, that comes from that because they hold on to this attachment in their role as the one that has to the caregiver in that scenario. So they feel like, "Oh, I got to take care of my younger brother cuz, he's struggling with X, Y, and Z." And they don't allow that sibling to kind of take accountability for their own
Right.
actions, right? So you think about that. Um, but even, on the flip side, when you hold on to achievements, those people who like to climb the career ladder.
Yes.
And if things don't turn out the way they expected, it's just like their whole world crashes around them,
Right. Because their whole identity was
was
around
attached
what they
to.
did for a living.
Yeah,
So if they
yeah.
were let go or fired or whatever, that takes a toll,
Mhm.
because yeah, it's a bruise to the ego.
Yep.
It forces you to now question yourself about, am I just this?
Mhm.
Because if I
Mhm.
am, that would mean that my life is over, right?
Yes, yes.
Because if I only know myself to be a senior vice president and now I'm no longer that, then what else is there?
Right. What's left in life for me? And then that type of
That's big, and
attachment,
that's
yeah,
big.
that type
And
of
some people go
attachment is
into
not.
depression over that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also my role as a mother,
Sure.
right? I'll say in the beginning, I've learned, but my kids are teenagers at this time, but when they were younger, my whole identity was around being their mother. And I think during that, I was being their mother and a wife. And in that time frame where I was just focused on being a mother and a wife, I was losing myself. And that's where you have to kind of start recognizing how these attachments are what role these attachments are playing for you, whether it's positive or negative.
Because I feel like that's also when your life started to move out of alignment and derail to the
Yes,
point where you had to be like, I no longer want to be in this circumstance anymore. Because I remember
absolutely.
pre-marriage, you were very big on the, let me read all the self-help books ever.
Yeah.
Let me connect to my ancestors. Let me do this. You were very always on top of it. I'm like, look at this brujita,
Yeah.
Nachi, and naturally always connecting to the spirits.
Mhm. No,
But you were
and
very much, you were actively doing things to uplift your vibration, like to
Yeah.
keep. And I think to your point of once you got married and then had the kids, you made that such a priority that you didn't prioritize your self-care first and the things that your soul needs
Yeah.
in order to be present in the way you were supposed to be.
Right. And yeah, and you notice, for example, career wise, I feel like I was stagnant at that time because, again, my focus was just being a mother. Like, you couldn't tell me about anything. I don't care. I have children and my husband and all of that. That was just my main focus. And it wasn't until I started releasing my attachments to these roles. Like, I started recognizing this is just not my only role. Yes, I am a mother.
That's
Yes.
not the only thing that defines you.
No, no. And that's when things started opening up for me. I'm starting to aligning myself to things that I need more of. And so we gotta sort of check the pulse on some of these attachments because attachments aren't always bad, right? It's, they have their positive, they have a positive role in your life as well because it provides stability. Like we talked about our parents and what they've, the stability that they placed on or provided for us
But
as
then I think on
children
the flip side, when your father
or even
passed,
as an adult.
right. But I think on the flip side, when your father passed away, it was destabilizing for us. And and it's
But
so
that was
interesting.
because, again, we were holding on to what was, right?
Yeah. And it
And
was letting go, but we were not ready.
we
But
weren't
because we're
ready.
so
We're
attached, we weren't ready to let
right,
go of
right.
the fact that, what are you saying? My father is no longer on this earth?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What? What does, first of all, before he passed, even thinking about one of my parents passing away would bring tears to my eyes. And I'd be like, you and
Yes.
I'd be like, I
Yeah,
can't talk
no,
about it.
no, seriously.
And so when it happened, it was surreal, was destabilizing because I no longer felt secure. My
Yeah.
father provided security, even though I'm a grown ass woman.
Yeah,
He
that's what I
passed
said.
away in my
Even as an
40s
adult.
as a grown ass woman.
That man.
I'm like, what do you mean Papi's no longer gonna be here in my life?
Right,
I need
right,
him.
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. But the
Child,
reality is that we all die one day, right? And we have
we born
to
alone, we die alone. But I'll be rejoined with the ancestors and with the
Okay.
creator. I'm good. But yes, but that was the cycle of that attachment, and that was something we just needed to let go of, and
Yeah,
whether we wanted it or not,
right.
umbilical cord was cut.
Yes, it was like, and they're like, it's time. He needs to go home.
They're like, y'all grown ass
And we're
bitches,
like,
stop playing.
no,
Yeah, no,
no.
this is
But, again, we talked about how the negative side of attachment when it comes to your career, the positive side of that being attached or attached to your career path, setting you're inspired by your goals. So that's when you are setting goals for yourself and you are reaching forward and trying to achieve it, that is a beautiful part of attachment because it makes you more disciplined. You're
right. It
more
motivates you
inclined, yeah,
to
you're more
to
inclined
move
to
towards that.
right in trying to reach your goal. The problem is when you think that it
That's the
defines
be
you
all and end
complete
all,
right.
right?
That's when you have to, check yourself and say, okay, you know what? I need to I need to reassess my situation. Why do I feel like this is who I am? When you're so much more than that. You're so much more than that.
Right. And we've talked about emotional attachments and these relationship attachments and identity attachments, but we didn't get to talk about the spiritual aspect of it. And I think if we're going back and forth about the positive and the negatives with that, there's a lot of good when it can come, especially when it comes to your spiritual journey. For us, it started within a religious structure. Catholicism. And there was a lot of good that it did for me in terms of providing me a place in a sanctuary where I felt like when I went to church, I felt good.
Yeah.
My week always felt like it started better because I'm hearing the gospel and it was uplifting because I'm hearing, listening to the word of God. But then, and that was also how I identified. I'm a Catholic and I
Right.
was proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at the same time, it became to me eventually toxic, stifling, limiting. Because as I continue to evolve and get older, this idea of I'm constantly in a state of mortal sin. And if you are a Catholic, you know what I'm talking about. I can't
Constantly feeling
even,
guilty.
yes, that constantly feeling guilty. I can't ever go up and get communion because they're like, if you're not in a state of grace, what the fuck are you doing up here trying to consume Jesus Christ?
I
And it's
still
just like,
consumed
what?
them anyway because I felt like, why are you
See, you were
telling me?
trifling.
Why are
You
you
were
telling me that I can't have?
no. My problem was that I knew too many rules of the Catholic Church that it was just like it kept me up at night. And
Nah,
so
I would break them.
no, I knew you didn't care. You didn't care. You're savage. And
Let me get the body of Christ and let me get a sip of that
let me
wine.
let it burn down my throat because it is going down a mortally sinful throat. What the fuck, Nachi? No, it's ridiculous. And I just could no longer buy into that. And also, I've talked about this institution so often. It is an institution in disgrace. Miss me with any shit. I know because I've born and raised in Catholicism. I don't respect the institution as it is run by human beings.
Right. Yeah.
I respect the word of God, yes. But you telling me how I should live my life, that I'm not a good person, I'm always in a state of sin. I don't know who you're talking to.
And why I gotta confess
Yeah,
to a whole
I
ass
don't know
man?
you. You creepy. You want to hear what I have to say?
Right, like I'm
You
not
want to hear about
confessing
me
to
and
you.
premarital sex? You nasty. You're nasty.
That's between me and God, and He already knows.
That's the other thing. It's like this idea, and this is with all religions. So the idea that there's always some intermediary. I don't need an intermediary. And
Yeah.
so for
Yeah.
me, I cut that attachment. And that was something
Mhm.
you knew how I was about the church. I would go every Sunday because I
Mhm.
felt good after the church. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I feel like my week is going to start off good, and it was a place where I could pray, really
Right.
pray. Like I
Yeah.
would, it was a form of meditation. But I was just like, we're no longer aligned. We're
Yeah.
no
And
longer
that's
aligned. I don't need you to tell me how to live my life, and also I don't need you to be like, let me put in a good word for you about to God about you. No, I have a direct connection. What do you mean that you're going to put in a good word for me? So if I go to confession, like it's not,
no,
no.
we're not doing that. We're not
So
doing that. Yeah.
I know, let me not go too ham on this, but the point is that even spiritually, for me, religion can be something that is, if not balanced in your life, can have a toxic place. That's
Yes.
me
It could
personally.
be a
But I also
hindrance.
feel you can be, and my point is you can be spiritual without being religious.
Yes.
You're a spiritual being, period.
Right.
You
Yep.
don't need religion to tell you that. It's just a
Absolutely.
matter of how you want to engage with God. Because here's the thing, nobody is going to convince me that I go to another part of the world they're not Christian. That means that they're not going to heaven. First of all, heaven, hell, that thing that
I
doesn't
feel like
exist in
this.
how you think it is.
Yeah. Cause child,
People are
this
living in
earth.
hell right now
Right. I was like,
in this realm. So miss me with that.
is hell on
So
earth.
again, my point is like you. So you're telling me the creator, the perfect being, created a world with people, and he's like, I'm only gonna take 10% of y'all.
Right. Right.
I only care about 10% of y'all because y'all eat and drink the blood of Christ. Fuck
But
out
I
of here.
did. But I did.
You're like, fuck mortal sins. Anyway, that's how I feel about the spiritual attachments. And for me, my journey was that
Yeah.
I left institutional
Yeah, and I think
religion.
that's a struggle for a lot of people, right? Because there's so many things that yes, they may agree with, but then a lot more that they disagree with. And so
Yeah.
how do you balance that out? How do you
And it's tough because it's community too, and that's what I loved about it too. It's
right.
community in that. And look, the thing is, I'm still a Catholic. My friend's boyfriend, who is also you like us, that went to parochial school
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
whole lives, and also a native New Yorker. And he's like, "Oh, so you're a fallen Catholic?" I'm like, "Watch your mouth. I'm not a
Right,
fallen
and nothing
Catholic.
falling.
I'm still right, still Catholic.
Right,
Just
right,
not practicing, and I'm not.
right.
I mean, I'm just not fallen. I don't need to say
Yeah,
I'm Catholic. I don't care if you don't agree, but I'm not fallen because I've been baptized, confirmed, communion, all that stuff. I
right.
got the paperwork.
Right, right. And getting my last right. So, yeah.
Right, right. I'm like, priest, come over here. You better pray for me and stop playing with me. Stop playing with me and pray over me. Put that
Okay.
oil. Put that
Okay.
oil.
Okay.
Stop
Anoint
fucking
me.
playing with me.
Anoint me.
They'd be like, but I thought you didn't. Watch your mouth. I don't care about the
Just
institution,
just do what you need to do. Come on.
but give me the rights. Read me my rights. Yeah, so
But yeah, but they also talk about surrendering to God. So those are
yes.
the things that the things that we agree upon, right? It's
Yes,
like
and
yes,
I
surrender.
surrender to God, and I am told you don't need to do this. The Creator has inspired me to walk out. So, and I have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it you find your place wherever that is, and sometimes you have to divorce it, and that's
Yes,
what that was. You
yes, because I felt the relationship was one of fear, and it's based in fear, and that just didn't jive with me anymore.
mhm.
Why am
Yeah.
I living like this? And so I didn't like that, and I also, putting aside separately the whole pedophilia
Mhm.
culture,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
really hard to continue to stand
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. But some things that I think about when you're exploring attachments in your life and you talked about fear. And that's a question that you want to ask yourself is, what am I afraid of losing? And that's always a good question to ask.
When you're in a situation that's not working for that you continue to
When
stay in.
you feel like you're not aligned. So again, with me, it was relationships. I was staying it longer than I needed to be. So if I asked myself, what am I afraid of losing? And with my marriage as an example, I was afraid of losing what I thought a family was. I was afraid of starting, I'm going to lose everything that I have now and I have to
That
start
you've
all
built.
over again, right? All of that. All of that. But then you have to kind of, you have to think about, is it worth you staying in that situation? Whatever that is it worth it?
And change is inevitable. I think that's the other thing of this process of releasing attachments is that sometimes you don't do that because, to your point, you don't want to. You're either afraid of the unknown of what's
Mhm.
outside of this change in your life,
Right.
or just the fact that you're losing the idea, the vision you had for yourself. So, what does that mean for you?
Mhm.
And but change is the only constant, right?
Right.
Change is always going to happen. So when you're rigid and you don't go with the flow, you're going to just run into resistance. And then that puts you generally out of alignment.
And that's when you suffer.
Yes.
You create your own suffering
Yes.
in
Your own
doing so.
hell.
Mhm.
You don't need heaven and hell. You
Right.
create it for
You
yourself.
creating that hell for yourself. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And it leads to suffering.
It does. It does. And again, that decision when I decided, okay, this is not for me, and decided that we needed to get a divorce, things started changing for me. You would think it would be the opposite, right? Because when you think about, okay, well, I'm going to lose everything, it actually turned out better for me. Things
It sure has. Yes.
with every parts of my life,
Praise
career,
God. Praise
the
God.
children, it's like things were just falling into place. But that goes to asking yourself, is this attachment empowering me or is it constraining me? Like, is it placing a constraint on me?
And I didn't realize, too, for me, when people used to talk about if you want something, like if you want something that's in your heart, of course, you can manifest it, but you have to be willing to surrender, let go. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking, what the hell does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I remember in my 30s, I was getting frustrated because I just couldn't find the right man that I felt, okay, this could be a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. It could lead into marriage. I remember reading all these things or hearing people say, well, just, what was it they would say?
Like, let it go, let it
Yeah,
flow,
just
and
let it
something like
go.
that.
Just don't
Don't
think
think
about it. But,
about it.
but in a weird way, it's like, but if that's what you want, put it out there, but at the same time, let it go. And I was like,
But,
what the fuck does that mean? But wait, but then I had to learn. I was like, what does that mean? Let it go. What am I letting go? And
right.
then,
Yeah.
and then someone else explained it best, which then flipped a switch for me. They said, when you're letting go of this attachment, it's not letting go of the idea of, oh, that you want to be married and you want to find a partner in life. It's letting go of the attachment of letting go
Of
of
the
the result, right? So rather, let me say, to not be attached to the end result. So
right. Right.
if I get married, great. If I don't get married, I should
Mhm.
also still feel great.
Right.
And that was a light bulb moment for me because I had never considered, if I don't get married, right, what if I need to be okay with that too.
Yeah.
And literally, it was just like there was a weight lifted for me because when I absorbed that idea, I was like, okay, well, that means I'll be the richest, baddest auntie ever. And I'll continue to travel
Right.
and do whatever the
Right.
fuck I want the way I'm
Right.
doing it right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, 3 months later, I was in my relationship with my then boyfriend that became my husband. That's what that
That was
was.
letting go.
And
Yep.
it was, and I didn't know what it was when people would say, I'm like, what am I letting go? And it was no longer, I was letting go my attachment to the end result. So
Mm-hmm.
I was letting go, I was surrendering to the fact that it can go either way and I was going to be A-O fucking K.
Because when you surrender, opportunities start to open.
Yes, but when people were like, just surrender into what? What does
Right.
that mean? And I
yeah.
could never get a straight answer. And my guides, my ancestors, they were like, "Bitch, here you go." And somebody, and it was
Because
at
it
a
has to
friend's
be
dinner.
black and white for you.
Yes, it was at
Like,
a friend's dinner. Somebody was saying, "Yeah," and so this woman said that surrendering means to let go to your attachment to
to
the
your
outcome.
results.
And I was like, "Oh, I could do that? Yes."
It's always hard to, especially, so just going back to dealing, wanting to be married and trying to figure out like, oh, how do I let go of that? Like, how do I surrender? Or what does that mean? It's always hard when you have family. Every time they see you, asking you,
My
when you
goodness.
gonna get married?
There were many of I was so close. I remember going to a family event with my cousins when my cousins were there, and they're like ganging up on me. One is like, "When you gonna get married? Like, if I want to get married, yeah, let me just pick up some random dude on the
Right,
street,
so y'all could be happy that
so
I'm
you could be
married.
happy that I'm married, and then let me get a divorce 5 years later." No, and then the other cousin, "You're being too picky," or something along those lines. I
Mm-hmm.
remember that night. I was so pissed. Mommy
Mm-hmm.
calls me just to check in on me. I kind of snapped at her, and she's like, espérate, espérate. Like,
What's
what is
wrong with
going on with
you?
you?
Yes.
And I told her she had to talk with my cousins, got in their asses. I was like, watch your mouth, stop talking to my daughter and
Right.
harassing her.
Right. Right.
Because real talk, I was like 5 seconds away from saying to one cousin, didn't you just have couples counseling with my parents? And the other cousin, ain't you on your second marriage?
mm.
But I was like, chill.
Yeah.
This is where we were. I just, and so, yeah, you have a lot of pressure from family, society, wondering, why aren't you married yet? Why don't you have kids? And some were just like, well, forget about the marriage, just have kids.
Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
absolutely
Mhm.
fucking not.
Mhm.
I have
Yeah.
no desire to have kids outside of a marriage because I need help. You already
Right.
know I can't do more than 3 things in a day. So how am I supposed to do this by myself with a kid?
Right.
No, I'm not signing up for that. And then I had a friend who was a single mom, and that seemed like a nightmare to me. And that's why I
No.
big up single parents so heavy.
Let me tell you
Praise
that
God. Y'all, God bless y'all.
that was another thought that was creeping in my head when I was coming to the realization that my relationship just wasn't working any longer. And it was a thought of like, again, losing a family, but the fear of now having to care for 2 young kids on my own. That was, and I know a lot of people will stay in relationships because of that. Like, I'm not going to do this by myself. And real
Also,
talk, y'all probably doing it by yourself anyway.
anyway, no, it's true. And then there's the stigma, right? Of
Yes.
you're a single parent.
Yes.
It's all kinds of fucked up.
Yes. Yes.
So I am constantly in awe of single parents because I
Mhm.
know the level of work that goes into that. And God bless you guys. God bless you. But I knew it was something I couldn't sign up for.
Right.
Willingly.
You were like,
Willingly.
right, right, right.
I was like, y'all could miss me with that shit.
So I know you said how, once you understood how to surrender or what to surrender, that was a light bulb for you. Are there any other ways and any other techniques that you've incorporated as you recognize certain attachments that may not be working for you?
Yes. So for me, when I feel that something is out of alignment, and even if it's as difficult as letting go of a friendship or ending some sort of relationship, I straight up ask God, I will say, if this person, like for example, a breakup that I had in my 20s, my late 20s, it was very hard. Like it was someone that I loved, but it was also, I think I was more in love with the idea of what we could be in the
Yes,
future
that is
versus
another,
who he
yeah.
was, right? And I was in love with the idea of
Attached to the
what we could be.
potential.
Yes. And how great we could be together.
Yes.
And when it, when I realized that this wasn't gonna be, this isn't good for me anymore,
Mhm.
it was really hard to let go. It was heartbreaking. And I prayed, I said, God, if this man is not for me, I need this pain in my heart to go away.
Mhm.
And when I tell
Mhm.
you, like within 3 days, that pain faded. Like
That
I was
was
like,
it.
if this man ain't for me, then I
Then let
can't
it
feel
go.
this way anymore. I
Right.
need you to help me.
Right. Right.
So my guardian angels, the creator, they were like, all right, bet. That's all you had to say. Say the word.
Right.
That's what
Got
all you
to.
gotta do is ask. And so literally that's what I do sometimes when I'm not sure of something. It's like, well, make it, if this ain't for me,
Mhm.
I really just come from a place. I'm always introspective. So I'm always talking to myself and I'm asking, oh, if I feel funny about something, I start asking myself why. And then it's a conversation of, well, if this isn't meant for me,
Mhm. Mhm.
I accept that, just remove it from my space. And that is literally what will happen. And so for me, I guess that's a form of meditation
That is.
and the self awareness that I have from a spiritual perspective of like how I think about things and
Mhm.
how I just intuitively move towards certain decisions if I feel like something in the milk ain't clean
Right.
and
Right.
I
Right.
gotta move forward.
And that's it. That's it. It's funny. Decluttering is helpful
Yes.
for me. That I don't know. I'll get into a space where it's just like, okay, I need to get rid of some stuff. And
They say
I
that's really huge for when you're clearing out your space. Then it's like something about, it clears out like even your mental space, your aura, just in
Yeah.
general. It
Yeah.
supports all of that. So it's
And
like you're making
making
space for
room.
the
Yes.
new things, the
Yeah.
right things that you need.
Yeah. And for me, I don't know, I do have a tendency of holding on to things because it holds some
We're part
sentimental
hoarders from your father. We're like
sentimental
part
value.
hoarders.
And I have to let it go. I have to let it go. I really do. But
It all depends for
decluttering,
me. I don't just be letting shit go.
yeah, not everything, but there are things. At times, I would, if I'm really in a foggy space and need to get some clarification, I may do a huge dump. Like I'm not looking through. I haven't looked at this in I don't know how long.
Wow, you're brave. I know, but that's the best way to do it. Because otherwise, you'll go down a rabbit hole of your own shit.
The only thing I don't throw away are papers. Like I gotta look at it because I gotta shred, make
Yeah,
sure.
no. Same here.
But other stuff, I'm just like, okay, I'm just throwing this out, giving this away. And it does help you with being clear with yourself. So if you ever in a situation as you're trying to assess like what is this attachment doing for me? Is this serving me in any kind of way? And if it's not, why am I holding on to it? And when you start kind of clearing out um your space, you do start to think clear.
Yeah,
And
so clearing out your space is a huge is an effective way to
yeah.
cut those attachments.
Yeah. And a lot of things would come up for me. And that's when I start journaling, right? I start because so much is going through my mind. I have to let it out on paper. And for me, that's how I purge also. Because my mind is cluttered. I gotta let it go.
Right, it needs to go somewhere, so
Mhm.
you release
Mhm.
it, and it's bye bye.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
And
that's
just
great.
yeah. And that's part and for you for me journaling is a mindful a mindful activity because I get lost in my writing. I'm just writing and just sharing my thoughts and just everything that's coming out all at once. And that's when you start to get your answers as
You
to
sure do.
why
No, no, it's
you're attached. Is it serving you? What are you afraid of losing?
yes, and I think for some people it's scary to do because they're afraid of the answer. And I get that.
Yeah,
And that's tough. I know.
it is tough.
But
It is
it's
tough.
but it's so freeing. It's so freeing. So I hope anybody that's listening to this that is hesitant even about praying, saying things out loud of like, I need help. Help me figure out how to get through this or remove this from my space if it's no longer serving me. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll see people
Mm-hmm.
fall away, different scenarios just change up for you because you asked for clarity or you asked
Yeah.
to remove the things that no longer serve you. And sometimes there are people, places, and things that no longer serve you.
Mm-hmm.
Like New York City no longer served me. I was a lifelong New Yorker.
Right.
I just moved a few months ago. My whole life has been in New York
Yeah.
outside of
A couple of years ago, if anyone asked you were you moving out of New York, you was like, hell no.
no. Why? Better why? Why? What are we doing? And
Maris had an attachment to New York.
I did. I did. And the good Lord was like, stop playing. It's time for you to go. It's done.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
things, and when I tell you that things were no longer serving me in that city, it just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
felt restrictive. I felt constrained. I felt like a prisoner in a city of 8 million people.
Right. Yeah.
Multiple reasons. And it just wasn't for me anymore. I enjoy now going back to New York City as a tourist. I love it. I love going there as a visitor. One, because I know the place. It's my home. It'll
Right.
always be my home in my heart. And two, because I could leave and I don't have to live there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that place and I love the people there. But it just no longer served me as a place to live. And that was okay. But
That
that
is
was a huge
okay.
change for me. And so I think covering these things that we talked about, How do you release these attachments that no longer serve you? Because it also is, there are attachments that continue to serve you. My sister being
Absolutely.
attached to me, she will die without not being connected to me.
Yes,
And
I
that's
would.
okay.
I'm not gonna lie.
Right. And vice versa. These things, look, we ride or die and we're going down together. It's Thelma and Louise off the cliff.
Yeah, if I don't speak to her, I'm like, especially when she goes away with her husband, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna bother you, but
Lies. No, no, you're pretty good. You're pretty
yes,
good,
yes,
when,
when you
especially if
go
we're
away,
visiting his family or
yes, I'm
something.
like, when's she gonna call me?
I'm like, please call me. Please call me. I can step out. It's fine.
Her husband's
No,
like, please don't call her.
right, right. But this is just, I think it's the process of evaluating your attachments, recognizing them for what they are, what purpose they serve in your life, understanding that there are limits, there are time limits sometimes, or other
Hmm.
type of limits, and that's okay. And that's when you release them. And it's knowing how to do that and trusting your gut and creating that space for yourself. So for my sister, it's decluttering, it's journaling. For me, it's a form of meditation, of being still, praying. And that's what we wanted to share today in this episode. All right. I hope you've gotten something out of this and recognize the value in set attachments. And as always, we like to close out with, there's a lot of noise out there, but our message is consistent. Stop getting distracted by the smoke and mirrors, by presidential executive orders. Tune out the noise. Focus on your divine purpose in life. Don't worry about deportations. Vibrate higher to elevate your frequency. And always, thank you for listening.